might have regarding the debt. As long as you're not asking me for amortization schedule information, because I don't have them in front of me. So, but I think that it went very well. I don't see any hands.
I have a question, Anne. I just fumbling with my mute button. So it sounds like we went ahead. We went ahead with obviously the DEQ offer for the sewer refi because they offered such a great rate,
Yes.
and then on the other loans that we have outside the sewer, are you saying we did a refinance with just a private company? Like we were kind of looking with a loan with a broker at some other options. So we did something like that for the other.
We went with DA Davidson.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify what.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Anybody else? Okay. So I guess did I skip? Do you want to go with the finance report?
Yeah, I think I sort of skipped over that inadvertently, Anne. So maybe we should go back to that and look at the current finance report, which is talking about this current fiscal year.
Right. So actually, this is as of September, and so it's pretty early on for the city. But so when you're looking at the percentages, if you look at these, the percentages look, for the first quarter, they should be at 25%. What I always look at is are they tracking kind of together? So within 5% of each other is what I like. I love for the 5% above to be in the revenues. But in the beginning of the year, that is sometimes hard because revenues have a time sensitive thing. So we don't receive property taxes until November, which is a humongous piece of our revenues for the whole city. So even saying that, though, as of September 30th, the general fund was at 13, it was quite a bit lower, 13%, whereas 25% expenses, which is what we expect for September, the first quarter. Our property taxes actually came in above budget, and you'll be hearing about that, but we actually track them. And I believe they came in about $20,000 over the expected full year budget just for what we received in December. Sometimes those are really hard to predict, and we purposely backed it down by 8. I believe I did 8. Let's see. It might have been 15% at budget time, simply because we didn't want to be caught off guard by what would come with COVID-19, and we had no idea what that would look like. So we didn't assume that everybody was going to pay their property taxes. But in Coburg, everybody did. And we had new houses that came online and new businesses that came online. And so overall, property tax came out really well. And so at this time, we don't have a concern there. And these sheets will look much better when you see December, because the city really is doing just fine. Street fund, 7 and 8%, just getting off to a very slow start, not a lot of activity happening, and the same for the water fund. And the sewer fund as well. So lots of, what I know is utility fees are on track. I can share that. And also keeping in mind that there are things such as the water loan reimbursement for our water project that we're still in the process of turning in a reimbursement. So that's, so that will be a chunk of money, probably almost $500,000 that we will be reimbursed for what we've spent on the water. So lots of time-sensitive revenues coming in, and time-sensitive projects that are happening. So overall, I think that there is nothing to worry about at the city financially right now. Our transportation fees, gas taxes are coming in nicely. Our utility fees are coming in. We thought we might see a loss in utility fees from people not paying their utility bills, but that is not happening. Tourism dollars, we thought we would see a decline in, but the reality is there is a decline in what the county shares with us. But as far as room tax, we have Premier RV that has been packed full throughout the whole time. So room taxes have not gone down. Our franchise fees are on track so far. So all of those big ticket items that we track at the city to make sure our revenues are coming in are doing well. And so that's good news. We didn't know what it would look like. It was a little nerve-wracking. So so there are no worries there. I'm happy to answer any specific questions you might have regarding the finance report. And I don't know how much you guys were able to read it. So if there's something specific you want me to go over more, I'm happy to do so. Nobody?
I'll just say that, you know, when I looked at it, and I just had to put it in perspective that, yeah, the first quarter was weird. It was all COVID. So I didn't expect it to be on par with the normal 25%. So like you just said, Anne, I think that at the end of December, it'll probably be a lot more clear to us how things are coming along. But great news on all those revenues coming in.
Yeah, we're pretty excited.
Yes, good.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. You kind of answered my questions, you know, about how does the revenue situation look? And, you know, I think everybody was wondering how that would sort of shake out with the pressures on our economy right now with the pandemic. But that sounds like good news.
You know, there's other cities that have Coburg, the primary, you know, property taxes are primary revenue. And I think that it's extremely important that we all voice the support of the downtown businesses and continue to do so. And if the city needs to step up and help them again, we should do so if, you know, COVID relief isn't coming, because you know, it's a stated fact that when downtown businesses start closing their doors, then property values drop, and then it all goes down from there. Then you start seeing a reduction in the city services that can be provided, and so it's in everybody's best interest to continue to support our downtown businesses and keep those doors open. And I hope that there will be some changes coming forward for Lane County, but I can't predict. So we'll see what happens. Yes, Councilor Lehman.
So I think there's still the coming soon sign next to the Coburg Inn. Is that on track to begin construction in the next year?
Yeah, I think they're in a pre-application process right now. So yeah, they're working on if they haven't already turned it in, I haven't heard through the holidays, but they were in a pre-application process. That helps them to before they dive in and they put a whole bunch of work into a building that somebody's going to come back and say, nope, you have to change that, then it allows them to ask the big questions, then go back and complete their plans. And so.
And are they looking to do the same identical footprint on the left side?
I'm sorry, I misunderstood what you're talking about. I was talking about the building that is the
Weichert, you're talking about the Weichert building, right?
Or the Primrose Lane. I was talking about Primrose Lane. So there is something happening there coming down the pike. You're talking about the wells, the other, yeah, I haven't seen anything about that. I haven't heard anything about that. So not
Okay.
yet.
And anything more around the property next to the city hall?
I haven't heard anything about that. We've heard a lot about industrial properties in the last month. We have received calls almost daily about empty buildings, empty land, interest. It's been a very strange renewed interest in doing business in Coburg. And I fielded 3 calls last week. And these aren't new properties. These are properties that have empty buildings on them that we have started marketing on a state level through what's called Oregon Prospector. And so we are receiving interest on those properties and trying to fit some businesses into them, which is good for the city. I mean, it's good. They're in the industrial area. They're empty warehouse buildings. So it's good for everybody if we get some people in them. Yes, sir.
So Mike Watson, my neighbor, has asked me twice in the last couple months about what activity is going on by the overpass on the freeway. There's a gate or something going on. I don't know exactly where he's talking about, but he's seemingly thinking there's some activity that's going on in that area.
I think if you're talking about over just north of Selby Way, that was the I-5 bore. So we drilled a pipe under I-5. And so there was a pretty good ditch or a pretty good trench on both sides of the freeway. And there is a gate for a private property owner that's being installed. That's a private gate. That's not the city's gate.
Okay.
But if they saw a bunch of equipment and stuff working in, they were out there for about a month trenching under I-5. That's complete now.
Yeah.
So,
I thought that he was talking about the I-5 bore, and I mentioned that, but he seemed to think that this was something different than that. But you think it's all related?
there is a very elaborate private gate that is being installed. So, but that has nothing to do with the city.
Okay.
So. Right, any more questions? Kathy, I liked your comment that I answered your questions before you asked them, because that's always my motto. Before they ask them.
That's right, there we go.
Okay, well, I can move on to the finance or to the audit report if we're ready for that. Are we? Did you want to?
It sounds that way, unless anybody else has anything for about the refinancing or the current state of the city. I guess we can move on to the audit.
Okay.
Okay.
So the audit report is a lot of information, and I think I've shared with you before that. I mean, who reads these is the finance committee and the bank. And hopefully the city council. But the first and most important part of the audit report is the independent auditors report that is in the front. And so if it's on page 1A, if you're looking at the report, and it's the opinion given by the auditor. And that, for me, as a finance director for years, and now as a city administrator, when I open this report, it's the first thing I go to, because that is the most important thing to me, is that in their opinion, it's a positive opinion, that they're saying that these statements referred to present fairly all the material respects and financial position of the city. If there were issues with the audit, it would not, either they would say, we're not going to provide an opinion, or we're going to provide opinion with exceptions. And so the city's seen both of those before, but in this point, this is a positive opinion. So it's a very good opinion of the work of the city. And they don't list anything that they have concerns about in that. So that's an important piece. And then it just goes on to explain all the things that they did. So basically what the audit looked like this year was they never came to the city, obviously. They set up a back and forth remote access that they would send us lists of things they wanted, and we would scan documents and upload them. And then they reviewed them that way. Then we had long lists of questions that we had to answer. They review our policies, and they do checks on, if we listed out accounts payable at the end of the year, they want a copy of all accounts payable invoices to make sure that what we reported as accounts payable is actually accounts payable. The same for accounts receivable. So they just do a lot of just checking. So the revenues, so the total revenues of the city actually decreased last year. But basically we had a lot less planning permit fees last year. I think, let's see, without looking at it, these were all, none of them were surprises, or that we were seeing a decrease in revenues coming from our services. They were more of, capital projects that maybe the year before we had more, or we had more development. Obviously we had the Hayden Homes development coming, so lots of development fees. We had a lot more accounts receivable at the end of the year, because we had a reimbursement for the water project that was a substantial reimbursement that we were waiting on. Overall, the city did very well. The net position reduced a little bit from last year. We spent some money last year that we planned to spend. That was a plan. It was in the budget. If you were on budget committee, that was even discussed, that we were lowering our ending fund balances, but that was planned. It was, we had SDC funds that we've been saving up, and now we are spending them. And we had several pretty good sized capital projects last year. So overall, our net position changed by $14,000 over the last year. In water and sewer, it actually increased by $16,000. So overall, we increased our net position by about 200 and, I don't know, let's see, no, that's not right. 2020. Well, yeah, 200,000, something like that for the whole city. So we're doing fine financially. The governmental activities, like I said, we saw lots of project type things that we were spending money on.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
So just in a guesstimate with the restructuring of our sewer water loans, what do you see a 1-year impact of that being on our net position for next year?
That's what we're working on right now, John. We're trying to push those numbers until we completed the loans and sign the documents. We didn't have the final numbers. And that's a piece of work that Tim's working on. I'm not working on that because I'm not in finance. But he will have those for you. And I would suspect that those will be very obvious when we start looking at budget. Some of them are not. I mean, like for general fund, that's not going to change. We still have to pay the city hall loan. And, but I would say that in sewer, especially, you're going to see a great reduction in debt costs. Anyway, so
real briefly, what is the budget timeline? When do we start?
So the city, the directors are actually working on their budgets right now. It's a step process. So the first part is they develop their priorities and goals, and then those are presented to the city council in February. The city council then develops goals and priorities and gives them back to the staff. So the staff present, the city council decides what should and will go forward. And then we start putting dollar amounts to it. So that would happen in March. And then the budget should be rolled up in late April and early May, and then go to the budget committee in May and be adopted in June.
And do you think our decision on the tough tax is going to be done prior to the budget being established?
Today we had a meeting and it sounded like we might bring back a discussion. We were trying to schedule discussions and it sounded like it would be in March, possibly, for the city council to discuss it. I know that it would go on the work plan, in the work plan, and then start the discussion back in March. Only because there's other things the city council has to discuss that are pretty big items that are going to take some time in February, probably.
And from the last time when we were getting ready to have a meeting or a work session on the tough, I think we have all the information that the council needs to make the decision. There's not information gathering still needed for that. Is that correct?
I think there's a big piece that will make a difference, and maybe it's good that we waited, and that is that we were granted $850,000 to fix our collector streets through a regional grant. And that makes a substantial difference in the dollar amount that would need to be put out in order to fix some of those streets. So keep in mind, it's only for the collectors, because that's the only thing that they can't fund residential streets with regional funds. They can only do those collector streets, but we did receive it, and so it's a substantial chunk out of that dollar amount that we had planned that the city would have to come up with. So that could change the amount of tough that we raise, for sure.
Okay.
Okay, so the other piece of the financial report that I think is really important, and if you didn't get a chance to read it, is the management discussion. Because that is really, it gives you the highlights. So it starts on page 2 and it goes all the way to page 13. And it starts with financial highlights and then it kind of ends with looking toward the future. And what are the economic highlights that are happening? And so it talks about, so the long-term liabilities of the city decreased last year by $581,000. So that's basically we paid off debt last year. And our current liabilities decreased. So those are kind of financial highlights. There's a lot of comparisons in there, both like our net position. If you look at this, it shows our net position in comparison to last year. So lots of different graphs and things. And then it gives you information on program expenses. So if you wanted to know what are our most expensive programs at the city, this is a really easy way to look at it. Public safety and general government are our two most expensive programs. That's on page 8. So that is where we spend our money. If you want to look on water and sewer utilities, you can see that the sewer department is a very expensive department, much more than water. Now, next year, that won't be the case because we are working on a water project. So, that's, this is another way of looking at the disbursements, just how much disbursements there are for each department. So this management discussion is really, I would say, the most helpful part of the report because it's written more for a person that isn't a finance person, that they could actually read it and understand it. When it starts getting into the government-wide financial statements, it becomes much more complicated and the average person is going to be scratching their head. So all in all, I think that what I would say is the city is doing just fine. We have a net position that's lower, but that is planned. We've spent some money. And we also had some depreciation costs that were pretty substantial. We started depreciating some things. The notes so the next piece is the basic financial statements. And those are, that gives us some comparisons to budget. So there's only one area this year that the city went out of budget in all of the departments, and that was in the public works salaries. And that's primarily at about April, May, we start looking at where are our salaries. And then we kind of have to estimate, okay, are employees going to take vacations before the end of the year because we have to accrue the vacation for the financial statements. Well, then COVID happened and nobody got vacations at the city at the end of the year between about April and June. And the public works had a whole lot of pressure put on them because of COVID. They were having to make changes to the park, to the buildings. And so there was overtime there that we did not plan on, which put that department a little over. And so that is mentioned in the financial statements, but that's really the only department that was not within budget. And it was a very small amount. So primarily the entire city managed within the budget very well. And
with your permission, it seems to me in a worldwide pandemic, in our little community, to have that be the only reasonable financial hiccup for our municipality is something worth rejoicing over, really, because there are certainly businesses closing all around us. And I don't know what we've dealt with in Coburg specifically, but there are definitely cities and counties and states in the country that have had very significant problems, and we're not. It's not that we don't have some problems that we have to deal with. Of course we do, but if this is the worst it is for us, it's happy dance time.
Right. Yeah, Coburg's. So there are cities that have ended up putting large dollars forward for medical things, for homeless shelters, for all kinds of things. And Coburg has not been put in that position. And so, yeah, we are unique in that we haven't had to put up money. We put up money, $50,000 for our downtown businesses. That was reimbursed, and then we were able to reinvest it in the community development fund so the businesses could tap it again. And so we did well while contributing to our businesses. So yeah, thank you, Terry, for that.
Question, Ann. On our governmental funds, the combined fund balance is about 1.7 million. Is that assets in the bank? Is that a budgeted figure or both?
So fund balance does not include it. Fund balance is mainly our revenues and less our expenses. So we have a running fund balance, but basically we don't get to count the capital assets. We subtract them from our fund balance. So yeah, it's funds available or it's funds reserved. And it's also the accounts receivable, taxes receivable, things like that, less any kind of long-term or short-term liabilities that we have. Mm-hmm. And that gives you your fund balance.
So the funds that we have deposited, are they in a variety of accounts earning different interest rates, or how is that handled?
So the best deal for local government is really the local government pool. So it's a statewide pool that you place your money outside of your bank account in. So the city has a main bank account with Key Bank that we keep funds for every fund in it. And then we have money in the local government pool. We have a little bit of money in Summit Bank, about $86,000 with zero interest, but that was a deal that the city made with Summit Bank when they financed City Hall, that you would invest so much money in Summit Bank, and we put the money there and then we just left it sitting there and we didn't do anything with it. Now we can close that account and pull the money and put it into the local government pool. Coburg is not in the position to invest in things like CDs or things like that, because there's rules about governmental investing that maybe we'll get there, but right now we don't have enough money, or we're so small that to tie that kind of money up for the lengths of time that it requires, it just doesn't make sense to us. So we rely on the government pool, which gives us, interest rates that are, I would have to look at what the current is, because I haven't looked at that in a while. I mean, it's not the greatest interest rate, but it's a steady interest rate on our funds. And we do earn every month on that. So that's primarily where we keep anything that's not in the standard bank. Mm-hmm. Does that answer your question?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. I also hear certain organizations self-insuring. Not quite sure what that means, other than instead of paying fees for different services, we self-insure. And cover our costs by investing the money rather than borrowing the money?
Mm.
Is that
So basically, the insurance pool that we are in is a self-insured pool.
okay?
So it's a pool of all cities and counties in Oregon. And that's what it is a self-insured pool. But no, I haven't heard of any. The majority of cities that I work with or involved in are with CIS. That's the standard. So.
Okay.
There's lots of notes to the financial statements. I think there's about 25 pages about PERS in here. We do have to report our PERS liability. We didn't used to, but now we do, and it's really complicated in how they figure that out. We are fine. We are doing okay with PERS. We are looking at about a 6% PERS increase coming down the pike. So we'll be tracking that for the new budget year. But there is quite a bit of reporting in this financial report about PERS. And don't ask me to explain it to you, because I think that there's only about 3 people in the state that can explain it at all. It is so complicated. And that is for the auditors to explain. I scratched my head and tried to figure this out.
And
yes, ma'am.
yeah, I agree with that. I did twice before try to read through all of that stuff, you know, and the whole audit report and try to understand all that PERS. I can't. So why are we looking at a 6% increase, and over what period of time?
Well, so the PERS, obviously, if you're paying attention to the news, PERS is in trouble. And they're trying to make up, to put it simply, long ago, the PERS, the payback to retirees was quite high.
Yeah.
And then the investments for the future, they came to the point where they could not cover what the promises that they had made. So what happens is the people that are in the PERS system now have to start making that up. And there's a percentage of what we contribute to PERS that is now going to build upon that. So annually we get a contribution rate, and we don't, that's based on the future markets. That's based on their projections of what it's going to take to cover the PERS retirees and the promises that are made at this time to those who will retire in the future. So at this point, what they're saying is for the city of Coburg, and every city is a little bit different in our rates, ours will be about 6%. So, and that takes place for 2 budget years. That will be beginning on July 1st of 21 and going through 6/30 of 23. And we get these little sheets that look like this that list every single city, and they tell you what your rates are. We have 2 rates. We have a police and fire rate, and then we have a standard general administration rate. So,
Okay. Thank you.
let's see. Overall, our fund balance at June 30th is 1.7 million. 860,000 of that is the general fund. I'm doing a spreadsheet right now that starts in 213, and maybe Tim will share it with you, that tracks all of our revenues, personnel expenses, regular expenses, capital projects, everything from 213 forward. And it's really interesting to be doing that sheet. Because if you were in 213, here in 213, a fund balance of $860,000 makes you want to do handstands. It's pretty exciting. You forget, and then you go back and do an analysis like that and go, wow, we were way in debt. 514,000 in 214, I believe, in the whole, in the general fund. So there are times when I get accused of being the purse strings, and I am very, I guess I am the purse strings of trying to keep a handle on spending and holding the line and reminding people that we have to remain resilient. But that kind of a fund balance gets me pretty excited.
Yeah, I think everybody would agree. That's good progress there
Yes.
from where we were.
Sure.
And thank you for, thank you for following up with people. I mean, it's a constant battle. You can never let your guard down. You always have to remind people, hey, how you doing? In comparison to your budget. And
yeah, no, we do a pretty good job here, but we, I guess it's the city is moving to a different place, and we have different values than we may have had then. And we're moving from a very small city to a medium. When you consider the work that we do, it's not normal to a small city. We're getting ready to do a salary analysis contracted to look at all the cities that are our size. And one of the struggles that we have with that is when you look at those small cities, they don't provide the services we do. And so to find apples to apples of the size of Coburg and the services we provide is very difficult. So we really have to look at a combination of those cities, but also look at the region. And the purpose is that we don't lose our public works employees to Gates or Malheur or any of those tiny little cities in the eastern side of the state. We lose our employees to Lane County in the state of Oregon, or the city of Eugene, or the city of Springfield. So we have to be, a little bit broader in our thought process about that. So it is, those are the things that as we're growing as a city, we have to be considerate of. I don't know what if you have any specific questions that you came across in the financial statements that you wanted to ask about. The other piece that I look at is on page 21, and that is the auditor's independent statement that tells you if he came across anything that caused him concern. And so in the paragraph 3 up from the bottom, it says, in connection with the testing, nothing came to my attention that caused us to believe that the agency is not in substantial compliance. So that is a good audit report. And they do a substantial job of testing. And so I think that is consistent with what we're trying to accomplish here. Any questions?
Well, I have just a couple little things. I'll just start out. Maybe somebody else will, maybe this will help other people think of any, maybe. So let's see here. I don't know if you happen to know off the top of your head, Anne. I'm looking at the statement of net position in the audit. It's on page 14. And at the deferred inflow of resources section.
Deferred info, okay.
Yeah, deferred inflow, receivables currently not collectible. And I noticed we had about 583,000 there. Do you happen to know what that is? I just out of curiosity, what that would be. I didn't know if that was like bad debt that we're worried people aren't going to be able to pay.
No, I think what that is the long-term LIDs. So that's what that is. We count both the LIDs that will be collectible in 1 year, and then the rest are long-term and they're deferred.
And then I guess maybe just more of a comment for the committee to just kind of consider again how to look at some of this stuff. One of the things that I look at on the statement of net position here was I like to see that I go up and I look at my current assets versus current liabilities. And I know this is for now a prior year that's ended at the end of July. So it's not a very current look, but especially if you were looking at a statement that was more recent of, say, the current year, it's helpful to glance at those because your current assets are your liquid assets, like your cash or things that you could easily turn into cash. And that gives you just a sense of, and then when you compare that to your current liabilities, which are liabilities that are due soon, bills you have to pay soon, it gives you a good sense of, it's one of those things you can look at to say, are we in a good cash position? Are we going to be able to pay our bills? And like here at the end of June, it was great. You know, we were doing great, a 5.5 million in current assets versus 1.2 million in current liabilities. So that's just one thing that caught my eye, and the kind of thing that, you know, aside from when you're looking at the actual statement itself, as opposed to the management discussion, you can kind of see for yourself, like, okay, that looks pretty good. You don't want to see it going the other way too much. Let's see. I also had one other question. It's on page 36 in the notes to the financial statements. And it's looking at the government long-term debt. And it shows an outstanding balance there for I guess this, now that I see it now, I think this is the Summit Bank loan. That must be, okay, that's the mortgage loan on City Hall.
Yes.
I don't know why I wrote this down now, but I had a question, the outstanding balance of $570,000. Sorry, my printer's printing now for some reason. It must be somebody else in my house. That I believe is that the principal balance? It's not interest. I don't know why I wrote that question down. Sorry, I don't have any context.
I believe yeah, I believe that's the principal, because the interest would be accruing annually. So, yeah.
Well, my question, it's not a very good question because I don't know why I wrote it.
I mean, that's about the equal to the ARM that was going to be due. So, yeah.
Okay.
It was, I think it would be due in 23. So.
Finally, I have just a clerical thing to point out in case you hadn't noticed it on page 13. In the MD&A, management discussion and analysis. It's in the paragraph number 4, the first sentence. It looks like it sort of ends up, it ends with the word including period. And I think that somebody probably meant to, I think that sentence just needs to be reworked. It's an incomplete thought. So just call out.
that, and I thought I read this pretty good, but
Just caught my eye, so I thought I'd point it out in case you hadn't seen it.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I will ask them to fix that. All right, is there any other questions? Okay, I've lost my agenda, my desk with all these papers, so I think I've shoveled enough that I buried it for sure. So I don't know if there was anything else on the agenda, but I guess I could turn that back over to you, Kathy.
Yeah, I think that it looks like we did go through most everything. It just it's on the agenda. It does say next step for committee, but I think maybe what we should talk about there is I know sorry folks, we got off kilter on our normal cadence of meetings. So our normal next meeting would actually be at the end of next month. And I don't know if you have any input on that, whether you think we should just go ahead with that and get back on schedule, or
I think you should just stay with that meeting and get back on schedule. It's scheduled already. And I know that we'll probably have at least October and November reconciled by then. And so I think you should. Absolutely.
Okay.
So, yeah. The other thing that I wanted to talk to you guys about, because I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, did I come and talk to you guys about setting some goals for the new year? I've talked with several committees, and finance and audit is a little bit different because you guys have a very specific job that you do for the city. But what we hope to do is have each committee prepare, and I can send a goal sheet that you guys could, I think it would be pretty simple for this committee, but that you would maybe think about if there were any goals you wanted to set as a committee for the new fiscal year that you wanted to share with the city council. And specifically, I know that you guys are kind of going through the accounting processes of the city. So that might be your goal, is to finish the review of the accounting processes. But if there was something else that you wanted to do that was very specific, you could also do that too. I don't know what that would be, but and then the other piece is, is the members of your committee sufficient? Are you getting the work done that you hope to get done? And it's just encouraging committees to have that conversation and then provide a communication to the council, and I'll send you the form. It's a simple form. It just says, these are the things we hope to accomplish next year. And then that will go into the city council retreat. So what we're trying to do is boost the communication from the committees to the council when the councils are setting their priorities. And I know like the Park and Tree Committee is working on this. The Heritage Committee is working on this. They have specific goals too, but finance is very, very, very specific. And while those committees can probably dream projects, you guys, I don't know. So, so you might want to think about that and have a short discussion at your next meeting regarding it. And I'll make sure you get that. And if it's only that you want to finish the review of the financial processes, or maybe you want to look at opportunities for investment in the city or anything like that, then list it so that the council knows that's what you're thinking. And if you need more help with that, I'm happy to show up at your next meeting and explain it a little further. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, I certainly myself am going to vote for we continue our discussion on the processes and make sure documentation of the finance and accounting processes. So I vote for that. But I welcome any input from any of the other committee members if you have any ideas of things we haven't really, dealt with in the past. I mean, like Ann says, I mean, it's a fairly prescribed committee in that we already have some pretty specific goals of just reviewing the city's finances and trying to make sure that we're that second set of eyes for the finance department and the city council with regard to the finances. So yeah, like it's a little different than a heritage committee where they could, they might have a number of different priorities or projects that they might want to work on that could be just, vary as much as what the interests are of the people that happen to sit on the committee in a given year. But
we have aspirations. We're just aspirational in a different way.
Right.
Well, I certainly would encourage you guys to think about it and anything that you want to say to the council as far as future financial, they want to hear it. And so I would encourage you that if there's anything that you want them to know for their retreat, that you write it down and make sure that I'll make sure it gets into the binder. So.
And is that, when is the retreat?
February 6th.
Okay.
So you guys will be kind of coming in late, but you're not the only one. There's a couple committees that are just due to delays and meetings and missed meetings. Things are a little odd right now. So we're just kind of being patient and encouraging the committees to take the time to let the council know what you'd like them to know. And so, so if you can do it, then I will make sure that it gets to them for their retreat.
Okay. And then I guess the other thing that, I will need to do is make a report to the city council. The good news is this was a pretty uneventful meeting, which generally when you're talking finance, uneventful is really awesome. But as a consequence, I don't know that I have a whole lot to report on.
Kathy, if you wanted to wait till after the June 30th or the January 30th and just come in February, you can do that too. It's up to you. I've already seen the agenda for January and finance committee's not on it. So so I think Sammy's got you scheduled in February.
Okay. Is John still here? I don't see him on the.
I think he left.
Oh, okay.
Or else he got kicked off. I don't know.
Got exited somehow. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask his opinion if he thought, people were anxious to hear from me. I could come to January, but yeah, I'll just go ahead and wait till February if you think that's when they were expecting me anyway.
I think that is the case.
Okay. All right. Well, with that, I guess I would just ask if Anne or anybody else had anything else, because I think we're getting toward the end here of the agenda.
No, but I was really happy to read such a good audit that I wasn't too surprised either. Good job.
I was here in 2013. I'm really happy for the progress.
Same here, Terry. Yeah.
We just have to hold the line, keep it there.
Yes. And thank you for doing that, Anne.
Okay. Well, yeah, I guess with that, I noticed we didn't have any minutes, but I don't know if I don't even remember. We've had to delay meeting for a while, so maybe we just don't have any to review.
So you would have met, yeah, I'll look into that. And
Okay.
If you have them to review, we'll make sure you get them to your January 30th meeting.
Okay, that sounds great. Okay, well, if there's nothing else, I think we're about ready to adjourn.
All right. Well, it was good to see all your faces.
Same here.
Hope you guys have a great new year. Let's hope for a new year.
Yeah, really.
Yes.
Right.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Okay, bye.